So, good afternoon, everybody. Today we are having a very important topic: sports medicines or sports injury related pain. And Dr. Karthik and Dr. Palak is going to cover it. And Dr. Debjyoti is there to moderate the session. So, sports injury related pain should be taken care by a team, not by individual doctor. And their team should have an orthopedicians and physical medicine people, PMR people, and a very important role of pain physicians. So Dr. Karthik is there. He is having this vast experience, and I'll be asking Dr. Debjyoti to introduce them speakers and to start the proceedings. Dr. Debjyoti, please.
To introduce two of our speakers. One is Dr. Karthik Babu Natarajan. He has done his MD, DNB, FIPM, FIPPM, FIPP, Senior Consultant in Pain Physician in the Synapse Pain and Spine Center, Chennai, and Consultant in Pain and Spine Physician, Apollo Hospital, Chairman, I think WIP Indian Section, Secretary, ISSP, Tamil Nadu, and Pain Physician of the ER Award he has received in 2017. So along with Dr. Karthik, we have Dr. Palak Modi. She is the pain physician from Ahmedabad. She has done his FIPP as well as she is the first lady from the Gujarat to pass the FIPP. And she will be with Dr. Karthik to say about this new topic. So Dr. Karthik, please. Hello? You are not audible.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you are audible now.
Okay, good evening to all of you. Thank you, Dr. Datta and Dr. Gautam Das sir, for giving us an opportunity. It's my honor and to be part of this program. So the topic for the day is Dr. Datta, you'll have to make me host or co-host so I can share slides, please.
I'm making you. Just a minute. Okay, I cannot. Sir, you have to make because you are the host. You are having the host, right?
Done. It is done.
Okay, fine.
Just give me 1 second. Okay, so can you hear me and see my slides, please?
You are audible and your slides are visible as well.
Thank you. So, so on behalf of Dharavia, let me welcome all the delegates. So we have been doing a series of programs on pain medicine. So today is my turn to talk about sports medicine. So, sports medicine is like an interesting and exciting avenue for the new role that's being developed for pain physicians. So I'm part of a team of doctors in Chennai, which also provides services to a lot of sports teams, professional teams. My clinic provides medical care for a lot of marathon clubs. We are official doctors for a few professional sport clubs, which include tennis, badminton, football, and lots and lots of cricket clubs. So I'm part of a team which does a lot of sports medicine. So why this is exciting is because as a pain physician, initially our role was restricted to sympathetic blocks and spine work. And then the regenerative medicine sort of revolutionized our practice. So regenerative medicine added a new tool that we could use in pain practice. And then the second one that came and changed things was endoscopic spine. So we have embraced both of this regenerative medicine and endoscopic spine. So sports medicine is something which definitely we have a role in, and this could be something exciting. So I'm going to share some fundamental principles that we have to follow when we do sports medicine practice. I'll also share a little bit of what I do in my practice in Chennai. Mind you, I won't be able to cover entire sports medicine in this 1 hour that we're going to have, but we'll talk about some basic stuff. I will be joined by Dr. Palak Mehta. So I'm going to talk a little bit about fundamentals, and after I finish, Dr. Palak will be joining me, and she's going to talk a little bit about specific conditions in each of these joints that we do see as sports injuries briefly, and then we'll take questions. So roughly we should be done by around 6:15 to 6:30 Indian time. So here we go. Okay, so sports medicine is something defined as the branch of medicine that deals with treatment of injuries related to sports and games. As a physician, our job is in preventing, in diagnosing, and treating sports injuries. Now, we also have to work in terms of improving performance of the sports person. So there is a role for us in that aspect as well. So you have to be working with the sportsmen in terms of preventing medicine, about nutrition, preventing further injuries, good sleep, and those things. So we have a role in the overall well-being of the sportsman as well if you're treating patients with sports injuries. Now, like Dr. Das said, sports medicine is not a single man team. No one person can say I'm a sports doctor. It is obviously a team which includes doctors. So this includes orthopedicians, it includes PMR people, it includes pain physicians. We have a role in terms of bringing the team together. We have the role in terms of doing minimally invasive procedures. I get called to see patients do cortisone shots. We get to call to do PRP shots, all sorts of things. Obviously, there are other people. The coaching staff are important. The patient's parents. We also have somebody called the conditioning staff. Most of the elite teams have conditioning staff. Then the psychologists play a role. The family physician play a role. Nutritionists play a role, and obviously the physiotherapist. A lot of teams have people who do chiropractor, massages. Those people also have a role. So this whole thing contains the sports medicine team. Okay, so what exactly we do in sports medicine? So I am basically a guy who does full-time pain medicine. Sports medicine is actually part of what I do, but I'm involved in terms of providing care to a lot of teams. So that's my role. I'm not an exclusive sports physician, or I don't claim to be an expert in all of it. Right. So our role involves providing knowledge about what causes these injuries, how to do proper conditioning, avoid faulty techniques, warm-ups, and improve overall fitness of each of these players. Now, some of the players that I've put up here are actually part of our patients team. So most of these players that I've put up, I've only put up only the international players that we have treated in our team, and almost all of them, either I have treated them conservative, but most of these people I have personally done procedures in. So this includes cortisone shots. This includes diagnosing them. This includes treating them conservatively. This includes PRP. So most of these guys, I only put the photos of the international players. We also have lots of national players who are there in the clinic. Now, see, this is an ongoing process. So we do treat these patients from time to time. So a lot of times they come in from a lot of times. What happened with the Tamil Nadu cricket boys is they came back from IPL and then they went for the Syed Mushtaq Trophy. So it's an ongoing process. So we have to keep track of them on the ongoing basis as to how we can get them ready for the next tournament and get them as fast as possible. Now, some of these guys, I'm not going to name anybody, but they have been there with us and we have done maybe even multiple procedures in some of them. You can see Dr. Vanmati is there with me in this procedure, in this photos. So why I'm showing these photographs is it is possible that that if you sort of believe in what the sort of work we do, it is possible that most of you will take sports medicine seriously and sort of include this in your practice. So that's the purpose of putting some of these photographs. So we sort of work with the physios. So that's the way the system coordinates. So you can see here, I am standing here with Mr. Nitin Patel. So Nitin Patel happens to be the chief physiotherapist of the Indian cricket team presently. So he's probably with the boys right now in South Africa. So we sort of, so this is in my clinic here. So you can see I'm standing there with Nitin and beside him is the sonography ultrasound that I use most of the time. So we sort of work in conjunction with the physiotherapist in treating these patients. One, second is most of the time, unlike normal patients where you can follow them up, it's not possible for you to follow up because most of these players, especially the professional, the international ones and the elite ones are always traveling. And so it's not possible to be like following them up. So you need to work with this team because most of the physiotherapists are following up. So it is possible if you're in a really top team, like an IPL team, to have a doctor traveling with you all the time. But most of the time, it's just a physio who's traveling with you. So physiotherapists play a really big role in sports medicine. This is other than physical medicine and rehab. So PMR definitely has a role, but probably a bigger role is played by physiotherapists. So I work very closely with the physiotherapists that are involved with the Indian cricket team, the IPL teams, the Tamil Nadu Premier League. So this gives you a sort of network. So one, sometimes they can bring the patient to you. Sometimes the patient comes to you straight. Second is to follow up, you need to work with them. So this is me and Nitin there. Okay, so what is the scope of practice? So essentially, other than being up to date with the anatomy and physiology, you should be good in terms of providing first aid to these players. Sometimes doctors in Apollo Hospital, Chennai are official service providers when we get to play, when the cricket teams or the football teams come and play tournaments in Chennai. There have been times when we have to go to the stadium to be as a backup. One, and second is there have been times when we were official service providers for both the teams. So the recently you had the England versus India cricket team, and we were service providers for both the teams. So pretty much I was doing injections for both the Indian cricket players and the English cricket players. So sometimes we provide care for both the teams. Right. So our role is in prevention, rehabilitation, optimal load, and scientific promotion of the sport. And also there is a role when these patients become sick with sports injuries. Sports nutrition is something that we have to work with. So there are specialized nutrition fellows who are trained in sports nutrition. So this is something most of the teams are bringing in. And so if you see some of the elite athletes, if you see the Indian cricket team, the nutrition is really up to date nowadays. And they are very conscious of what they eat and how they go to sleep and stuff like that. There is also a role where you have to be careful about what medicines you're giving these patients, because one, there is a thing called substance abuse. So that is one that you have to keep in mind. And also whether the medicines that you're giving for treating their pain, whether this medicine becomes performance enhancing. So this is something that you want to keep in mind, especially steroid shots and PRP shots may be considered as performance enhancing. So it is possible that some of the teams may be using their sports medicine doctors to enhance their performance. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. Curative and preventive exercises and sports traumatology. Now, it is little tricky for just a pain physician who's not from an orthopedic background to be treating patients with sports medicine. So I told you I'm part of the team. So there are other people involved. So I also work with orthopedicians who also are backing me up in terms of diagnosis, in terms of whether if required arthroscopic surgery is required, if required, big trauma surgeries are required. Okay, so briefly, what are the sports injuries that we're going to see? So broadly, you're going to see a lot of soft tissue injuries. We're going to see a lot of bony injuries. We're going to see a lot of joint injuries. We'll briefly have a look at each of this, and then we'll talk about principles of managing this. Obviously, there are lots and lots, tons and tons of injuries. We're not going to talk about each of them. We'll talk about principles of managing all these sports injuries. So in terms of soft tissue injuries, we're going to see a lot of contusions. We're going to see a lot of strains, sprains, abrasions, and bruises. So when you talk about a contusion happens most likely when there is a direct blunt trauma on the muscle. So the blood vessels are injured. So these patients come with pain, swelling, and stiffness. This is more common in boxing, wrestling, and kabaddi sort of sport. So this is something that you can manage conservatively. This you manage with rest, with anti-inflammatory medication and a liberal amount of icing. And depending on how they come around, you also have to decide how long this patient needs to rehabilitate. So one of the tricks of being a sports physician, or the crucial decisions that you have to make, is how long you're going to stop them from playing. Now, remember, when you're treating normal patients, time may not be a constraint, because you can ask these patients to take rest for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and take medicines and see how they are doing. And if they don't come around with conservative treatment, you can think of next level treatment like minimally invasive procedures or arthroscopic surgeries or open surgeries. Unlike that, in sports medicine, time is a constraint. So you have to make very precise, quick decisions. If you don't give them the appropriate period of rest, it's possible the player goes back and plays and gets more severely injured. So it's possible that somebody with a partial thickness tear of a muscle, you cleared, and he played the next game and he came back with a complete tear. So that is also not ideal. At the same time, you don't want to be taking players off their games for too long, because sportsman's life is only about 10 years or so. So they need to play maximum games during that time, not only for playing purposes, professional purposes, but also it's their livelihood. So they need to make money. So in terms of availability, if they're not available, it's possible that they don't get bigger contracts and they lose out on money. So the motivation to play for the player in elite athletes is very, very, very high, because there's a lot of remuneration involved here. Strains, yes. So muscles having partial thickness tear is something that we call a strain. So most of the time, whenever we see strain, it's obviously you will see grade 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on how the grading is. One, and second is, if you're not sure what the grading, obviously the MRI is going to be. So most of the time, whenever we order MRIs, we don't order it to most of the normal MRI things, normal MRI centers. We have a few musculoskeletal radiologists in our city. So most of the time, the sportsmen get MRIs in the musculoskeletal radiology. So they are a little bit more adapted to see sportsmen. And so in Chennai, usually we follow up with about 5 or 6 centers, mainly 2 or 3 centers. So what we are looking for in an MRI center, if you're looking at sports injuries, is one, the person is musculoskeletally well read, and second is, most of the time we may have to take this data back. So if you have an MRI center which is actually putting this in their mainframe, and if required, this is archived, and if required, they can be emailed back to you. So that's what you're looking at when you are imaging for sports. In terms of ligament sprains, so you could have partial thickness and complete tears. So in complete tears, other than immobilization and first aid, we're looking at open surgery. In partial thickness tears, you may be able to manage them with conservative treatment, sometimes with just immobilization and icing. Sometimes you may require PRP or regenerative medicine shots. Operations where there is an exposure of the skin. So if the skin is not intact, so we're talking about abrasions. Again, something that you can manage conservatively. Bruises are much more deeper injuries where the blow is quite severe. The blood vessel is ruptured and they come with big bruise. Okay, we also see lots and lots of bone injuries. So that's where the role of the orthopedicians comes into play. So orthopedicians are have to be part of the team. So we see multiple types of fractures. We see simple fractures, compound fractures, weak stick fractures, comminuted, impacted, and depressed fractures. So most of the time, whenever these patients end up with fracture, unlikely that they will go back to play during that season. So whenever they come with soft tissue injury, the sort of period we are looking at is 1 week, 2 weeks, or maximum of 3 weeks of off time from playing. So mostly they will be able to go back and continue the season. So if you're looking at a cricket player who's playing a 3-day or a 4-day or a 5-day match, most of the time we may bench them for a period of 2 matches and then they can go back and continue the season. So they're quite okay. If they're playing a shorter format like a T20, then it becomes a little tricky. The footballs and the badminton players usually don't require such long rehabs unless they have a complete tear of the muscle or the fractures. Right. The sort of injuries, Dr. Palak is probably ready with each joint. So she's going to be talking about shoulder, elbow, wrist, hip, knee, and ankle. What are the common injuries that we're going to see? So I'm going to briefly touch about a few conditions. So this lecture is on fundamentals of sports medicine. So I'm going to touch about briefly a few conditions that I see in my practice. So we see a lot of muscle strains. So partial thickness muscle tears. So common injuries that we see like in the cricket players is shoulder. So we see a fair amount of rotator cuffs. We see a lot of labral tears. We see infraspinatus. Abdominal strains, rectus abdominis tears, gluteal muscle tear, hamstring tear. So this is something that we see routinely in cricket players. But probably if you ask me, the commonest joint that is there we see in cricket players is the shoulder. So muscle pulls we see very commonly, partial thickness muscle tears we see routinely. Shin splint. So shin splint is basically something that is called as a medial tibial shin syndrome. So this is something that we see in football. So most of the time, football, the injury and the players kick each other, and the ball is they fall over the ball. So tibial shin syndrome that we see more commonly in football and hockey. Lower back pain, surprisingly, we do see in cricketers. Now, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is whenever you see these patients or players, you want to have a look at his action. So when I say action, the action that he is using repetitively during his sports activity. So if you're looking at a fast bowler, you want to have a look at how he's running up, how he is loading, how he is jumping, and how he is delivering, whether he's front arm, whether he's side arm. So usually most of the time when players come to you in their phone, they usually have a slow motion of their normal run up and how they deliver. Now, probably working on bio-EMR, but Chennai being one of the centers which is ICC affiliated, some of the centers in Chennai have biomechanical analysis. So where we put small sensors on patients, on players, and we make them repeat what they do on the field. And we have multiple cameras. And from that, we are able to biomechanically analyze these players and find out if they have an inherent problem in their normal action. And if there is a problem, we try to rectify that. So this is something where you're also able to pick up if they are doing anything illegal, like if somebody is throwing the ball instead of bowling. This is something that helps us to do that. So have a look at what his bowling action is, and if he's putting too much strain. So common things that you see is if you see a fast bowler, most of the time, when they load up, sometimes they may go too much back, and this puts a lot of strain on the lower back. So most common place where fast bowlers get stress fracture is the posterior vertebral margin in the lumbar vertebra. So posterior vertebral margin in the lumbar vertebra, very, very common to find fast bowlers get stress fractures. So if you don't work on their action, they're going to go back and get the same problem again. So you need to be working on them biomechanically as well. Shoulder impingements we do see commonly. Now, in the shoulder impingement, things that you want to be looking at are, other than the supraspinatus tendonitis and the bursitis and partial thickness tear, also have a look on how the acromion is looking. So sometimes you will have a type 2 acromion or a downturned acromion. Now, whenever patients have a downturned acromion, the supraspinatus is going to come below the acromion, and then it's going to get attached on the top of the humerus. Now, what happens if these patients have a downturned acromion is, whenever they are playing overhead sports, so whenever they are playing things like basketball or volleyball, so whenever they are playing overhead sports, players with downturned acromion tend to get more injured. So if you are seeing a patient with, let's say, a supraspinatus partial tear, normally what we do is we try conservative treatment. If they don't come around, we may think about going ahead and doing a platelet-rich plasma injection into the supraspinatus if conservative management fails. Now, one thing that you want to keep in mind is, if these patients have downturned acromion, even if you fix the supraspinatus with PRP, if the acromion is downturned, so they are going to keep getting repeatedly injured there. So in these patients, you need to go and arthroscopically shave the acromion. So trivial things that you want to keep in mind while treating them. So shoulder impingements we see predominantly in players who are playing overhead sports. So basketball players, volleyball players are notorious to get shoulder impingement. We also see this in fast bowlers, so because they're doing a round arm action. Runner's knee is something that we see more commonly in shuttle sports. So that's something that we see in our tennis players and badminton players. We also see patellofemoral arthritis. We also see a lot of chondromalacia. So all these terms are pretty much interchangeable once in a while. So what happens in shuttlecock players or badminton players is, when they are playing normally and they are smashing, they are okay. Whenever they are doing a front lunge, so let's assume that you're playing badminton and the opponent has played a drop shot. So the drop shot is dropping in front of the court. So you are lunging forward to take the drop shot. So when you do a front lunge, a lot of these players injure the patellofemoral cartilage, not the medial compartment or the lateral compartment cartilage, the patellofemoral cartilage. So players with shuttle sports are notorious to have injuries like patellofemoral arthritis, chondromalacia. This is something that we see routinely. A lot of badminton players do come in once in a while to sometimes get PRP shots in their between the femur and the patella. We also do a fair amount of hyaluronic shots before they go in for tournament. Tennis elbow we see routinely in all sorts of sports, especially in batsmen. Players, especially batsmen who have a heavier bat. So this is something that we see whenever the leading arm, the bat is heavy and they're playing mainly with front hand action. This is tennis elbow we see very, very commonly. Achilles tendonitis we see in almost all players. This is more common in marathon runners. So my clinic is official doctor for a lot of marathon clubs in Chennai. So the things that you want to keep in mind in marathon runners is, before they start running, you need to make sure these patients initially walk, brisk walk, jog, and then build up the muscles that are required. So whenever you're looking at runners, the muscles that are required to be strong include mainly the quads, the hamstrings, and the calf muscle. So you need to strengthen these muscles before you actually let them run. So suddenly you should not let somebody run 3 or 4 kilometers. Gradually they build up to it. One of the other things whenever you're looking at runners is the sort of footwear that people are using. So runners, it's essential the footwear is right. And so one of the things that you want to keep in mind is, you want to look at the player's feet and look at how their medial plantar arch is. So sometimes you will have players or patients who have a flat feet. Some of them have a mid arch, some of them have a high arch. So when players or runners buy new shoes, it's essential that the medial plantar arch is supported by the support that is there in the shoe. So if they have very high arches in their feet, it's essential that you give them the footwear that has the arch support. So some of the sports shoe companies are known to make shoes which actually have high arches. So most of the time, if you buy shoe, the shoe is actually flat, right? So, but there are some companies which make footwear with high arches. So you need to make orthotic footwear with appropriate arch support depending on the patient's feet. So we find that especially in runners, if you work on the footwear, the sort of injuries that we see is much less. And you'll be surprised that when we work on the appropriate footwear, a lot of knee pain actually settles down. So footwear is something that we stress upon in players, especially runners and the football players. So footwear is something that we should work with. Achilles tendonitis, we pretty much see very commonly. So especially people who are not acclimatized to running and suddenly start running. Obviously, we do see this in middle distance runners and marathon runners as well. Ankle sprains. Now, ankle sprains are something that we see. We sort of divide them into lateral ankle sprains, which happens more when we look at an inversion of the ankle injury, and medial ankle sprain when we look at the eversion injury. So the tendons that get involved when we do an inversion injury, that is the lateral ankle sprain, usually the tendons that are involved include the peroneus longus, so which is notorious to get injured. Peroneus tendonitis is more common whenever patients have lateral ankle pain, swelling, tenderness. The other ligaments that are there include anterior talofibular ligament and the medial talofibular ligament. So those are notorious to get injured. So whenever people come with lateral ankle pain, think of peroneus longus, think of ATFL, think of PTFL, and the collateral ligaments around the ankle. Whenever you are looking at medial ankle injuries, so this is happening when there is a eversion injury. So when this happens, we are looking at posterior tibialis tendonitis. Sometimes tarsal tunnel syndrome can cause medial ankle pain. And so these are two things that you want to keep in mind. So medial ankle, think in terms of posterior tibialis and tarsal tunnel. And obviously posterior ankle pain, you have to look at Achilles tendonitis and retrocalcaneal bursitis. Just give you some ideas about what are the common ankle injuries that we do see. Concussions we do see, and groin strains we do see. So groin strains sometimes can be a little tricky. Now, the sort of injury we are looking at when we are looking at groin injuries could be a direct injury to the groin. Sometimes in football, the football is in the middle and two people are kicking the football at the same time. So this is a typical injury where we see adductor tendonitis. So adductor tendons are in the medial compartment of the thigh. So they go and attach all the way up in the groin. So patients coming with the groin pain, medial aspect of thigh pain, adductor tendonitis is something that we see very commonly. We also see a lot of hamstring injuries, ischial bursitis, those group of injuries. Now, how do you approach a patient with sports injuries? So far I talked about my practice and I talked about some basic principles and how do you approach, how do you see common conditions. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about some more principles that I follow, some basic principles. And then I'm going to ask Dr. Palak Mehta to join me. And then probably I will conclude the webinar, right? So whenever you're looking at an injury, first try to identify what the condition is. Now, one of the things that you want to keep in mind are, this is possible that you may be seeing this patient in the field. It is possible that you may be seeing this patient in the field at the end of play. It is possible that you will see this patient subsequently after playing the next day in your OPD. So the last situation is most likely. Now remember, whenever players are playing on the field, they are warmed up and they are high on adrenaline. So very, very tricky to assess the extent of injury on the field, because a lot of times when players get injured, they don't complain of too much pain because they are high on adrenaline and they are warmed up at the time of injury. So it is little tricky for the doctor or the physiotherapist to assess how much injury is there. So what you want to do is take a judicious call and then, if required, call this player out of action. Now, once they cool down, a lot of times what happens is they get the injury and it doesn't pain that much, and they go on and continue playing. And when they cool down, the pain is very severe. And the end of the day, when you do a scan, you'll find that what was partial tear at that time has become a complete tear of that muscle. So that's a call that you have to take. But when you're seeing them the next day in your OPD, it's not that confusing. It's pretty much like seeing any of these other patients. So confirm the diagnosis. Now, confirming diagnosis, sometimes in normal patients, it's possible that you take a call based on your clinical acumen, based on the patient's symptoms and stuff. So you take a call to treat these patients conservatively. But what I would suggest to you is, whenever you're treating patients with sports injuries, please, please, please don't hesitate to take the MRI. So one is, you don't want to take any mistake whatsoever whenever you're treating sportsmen, because one, your reputation is at stake. You want to do correct thing. Two is, it's very important for the sportsman also to go back. So my threshold for ordering MRIs in sportsmen is very, very low. So there have been times when I've ordered MRIs like in 1 week's time also, repeat MRIs. So always don't hesitate to go for the higher investigation, which could be the MRI. Conservative treatment, ultimately it comes down to RICE. So whenever you're treating patients with injuries, you have to be resting them, icing them, compression and elevation. In terms of medication, so sports injuries is just like any other musculoskeletal injury. You'll be giving them COX-2 inhibitors, NSAIDs, preferably the stronger ones, because you want them to go back to action fast. The appropriate proton pump inhibitor, and something to regenerate the tendon fast. So this is your principal management. Now, the protection of the part is very, very important. We'll look at it later. And if required, we may think of interventions or surgical options. So some principles that I want to talk about are the role of imaging. So never take a call based on your clinical acumen alone, because one, these patients or players are very highly motivated to go back to action as fast as possible. There have been times when I've seen players who come, and there was one incident, I'm not going to name the player. This patient had a side strain. Side strain is a condition where this patient actually had a tear in the just below the costal margin, in the lateral aspect of the abdomen. He had a tear in the internal oblique. He has a tear in the muscle, and he is playing a league which is the Tamil Nadu Premier League, and he is an important batsman in one of the teams. And he came to me insisting that I do a steroid shot because he wants to go back and play. So it's possible you may get into situations where these players are under very high pressure to get back to action fast. And also, a lot of times when the physio refers to you, the physiotherapist of the team is also under a lot of pressure to get this player back to action fast, because they want the team to be better. So always make a judicious call based on experience, and always image, because it's important for the patient, it's important for you, it's important for medical legal purposes, it's important for future reference. So never hesitate in ordering MRIs in sports injuries. One. Second is, ideally the MRI should be read by a musculoskeletal radiologist who has seen sports injuries prior. Third is, if you're ordering repeat MRIs, try to stick to the same MRI center or the same hospital, because if it is a totally different system, you may not be able to see how the disease is progressing. So usually we do a initial scan, and then we immobilize this patient with the appropriate splint and put them on conservative treatment. We may reassess them functionally by making them move the part, making them run, making them do their original sports action after 1 week and 2 weeks. And if they are better, we put them on rehab. So the functional call, whether to put them on rehab pretty much comes with the clinical acumen. So if they are having too much pain when you do normal activities, you cannot put them on rehab. So role of imaging is very, very important. So I would like to stress on that. In terms of treating these patients, the first thing is always protect the part. So whether they are in action, out of the ground, at home, make sure you give them the appropriate splint. So protection is very, very important. Rest. So this is the doctor's call as to how long this patient will rest. Whether you're going to rest him for 2 days, you're going to rest him for 1 week, 2 weeks, is based on the injury. Icing is something most of the physiotherapists would have done already. So icing is something that we see. It reduces inflammation. It reduces pain. So these patients are able to go back to action fast. So icing is very important. Compression is helping, and elevation of the part. So putting them on a pillow, putting the limb on the pillow actually helps in reducing the tissue edema, so they sort of heal fast. Now the book sort of changed the PRICE protocol to what is called as the police protocol. So the police protocol essentially includes a newer component, which is the optimal loading. So you want to be optimally loading these patients when they go back to action fast. So gradually build up the force of the loading. The next principle that I'm basically talking about different principles that we follow in sports medicine. Role of immobilization. So role of immobilization, make sure you order the correct immobilizer. Make sure the patient or the player is wearing it properly, and otherwise you have to educate the player as to how the immobilizer has to be worn, because this is very, very, very important. So make sure this is applied properly. So ideally, this patient should be icing it in the morning and then putting on the immobilizer, and then they have it till night time, and then they ice it again, and then they go to sleep, usually without the immobilizer. So immobilization of different joints is very, very important to further aggravate injury. We also will be using immobilization whenever we are using stuff like regenerative medicine. So usually when I do a PRP or a BMAC shot, I sometimes put a shoulder sling for 5 days to 1 week. Make sure the PRP stays in the joint. So usually at least for 5 days, I try to put a shoulder sling, and then we start rehab. So I put the sling on for 5 days. After 1 week, I will reassess this patient. If the range of movement is good and they don't have too much pain in the range of movement, then I start on rehab. If they have too much pain, I may continue immobilizer, and if required, I may go for another PRP shot after 2 or 3 weeks. So this is my way of doing it. There is definitely a role for regenerative medicine. So conservative treatment includes what I talked about, PRICE or police protocol, and then we'll be giving our anti-inflammatory medication and seeing if they've come around. There is definitely a role for PRP in these patients. So the whole concept of regenerative medicine came about because of sports medicine. So PRPs basically came from sports medicine, which we borrowed to the general population because we cannot make the player wait for too long. So that's why PRP itself was invented. So PRP has a big, big role in sports injuries. Lots and lots of famous athletes have got PRP. I myself have done PRP injections for a lot of international Indian players. So they have been doing pretty well. So under image guidance, we should be doing them. So I get to do a lot of shoulder injections. You can see here, this is an ACL injection. This is supraspinatus injection. So reasonable amount of injections we do. Now, whenever these patients are in season, PRP requires at least 2 to 3 weeks of rest and going back to action. So if they are in season, most of the time we won't be able to do PRP. So it's pretty much going to be steroid shots and conservative treatment. If you're pulling them out of the season, or if they're off season, so that's a good time to do. So whenever these players come, what we try to do is we try to get about 2 or 3 months of off season. So if you see currently, most of the cricket players, except the international ones, are on off season. So this is a good time to rectify a lot of injuries and do PRP injections. So try to look for off seasons whenever you're looking at regenerative medicine or PRP sort of procedures. If you're planning a surgical procedure as well, always look to do it in the off season so the player is comfortable going back to action. So after the PRP, we usually start rehab after 1 week. and then gradually build up his role. And usually if everything goes well, we make him go back to action at about 3 weeks. So 1 week of normal rehab, second week onwards, he tends to do his sports rehab, which he does in a normal sports. Third week, he goes back to action. So that's my normal protocol. So at this point of time, I'm going to invite Dr. Palak Mehta to talk about specific conditions in each joint. Once Dr. Palak is finished with her small lecture, I will come back and we'll talk about injury prevention, and I will wind up. Dr. Palak, if you're there, can you join us, please?
Hi, Karthik. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful talk. It was briefly covered the entire aspects and fundamentals of this sport injury. And I mean, you have covered the majority of part. I'm just supposed to tell about certain labels. And definitely, I would also like to share a few of my experiences at the end of my part. So, as Dr. Karthik has mentioned, that I'm going to cover about the common sports injury. So do my screen is visible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Visible.
Okay. So today I'm going to discuss about the common sports injuries. The region what we cover, the common injuries for the upper limb, they are shoulder, as Karthik said, the rotator cuff is the very much common, then the labrum tear, elbow, wrist, and for the lower joint, lower limb, it is hip, knee, and ankle injuries. And recently in Ahmedabad, there is this recruitment program for the police people. So they are doing running practice. So I came across around 2-3 cases of the stress fracture. So as Dr. Karthik said, that improper beginning of any workout or without proper conditioning and training, if you are starting running, that may lead to kind of stress fracture. So these are the conditions which I came across. The shoulder injuries, as the most common is dislocation, which is very common with the any sport associated with the throw or any jockey movement. Rotator cuff injury, again, it is very common with the racket, when you are holding racket, which is common in badminton, tennis, as well as javelin throw. AC joint OA changes or injuries, again they are common, but again they might be as a process of degenerative process. Labral tear, again this is very common. Fracture again, this is little uncommon for the upper limb injuries or for the shoulder, but yes, it might be there. And the repeated trauma or repeated friction of the muscle against the joint may lead to bursitis. Elbow injuries, as the name only suggests, is tennis elbow and the golfer's elbow. The tennis elbow more common in the players who are playing tennis. Again, it is an inflammation of the lateral epicondyle at the elbow, and the golfer's elbow, that is inflammation of the medial epicondyle of the lower part of the humerus. Another common is olecranon bursitis. Fracture or avulsion injury, again might be common. The thrower's elbow, rupture of the tendon, bicep tendon, again it might be very common. So the thrower's elbow, you can say there is an injury or rupture or tension in the ulnar.
अब बताइए कि नवंबर में मान लीजिए 11 गाड़ी आया तो शुरू से
in thrower's elbow, there is tension or inflammation along the ulnar collateral ligament and entrapment of the ulnar nerve at the elbow joint. So these are the common injuries which are likely to happen at the elbow. So there is a huge list of injuries related to the sports. According to the different sports, there are different injuries. Another common injury at the wrist or hand is when there is a fall on the outstretched hand, there is fracture of the wrist ligament or the scaphoid fracture. Scaphoid fracture, again, it is very common in the football as well. The skier's thumb. This is skier's thumb. This injury is very common when you are doing skiing and holding the pole, and there is some jerky movement when you are resting pole on the snow. Dequervin tenosynovitis. This is again common with the golf and tennis, and jam finger. So this is common injury in the basketball players. So there is a huge list of injuries are there. Going to the lower limb, Another hip injuries. Now, which are the common hip injuries? So, muscle sprain, again, one of the very common injury at the level of hip joint, trochanteric bursitis, labral tear, osteitis pubis. Again, this injury is very common when there is a junction of the two pubic symphysis. At that level, there is insertion of the adductors of the hip joint. So, when there is overstretching or straining of this hip joint, it may lead to inflammation around the insertion of the adductors at pubic bone. So this is again very common in the soccer and football player. Stress fracture. I have seen few cases of the stress fracture in the femur shaft as well, or sometimes intertrochanteric fracture is common. Intertrochanteric fracture again very common who are playing football and soccer. Sport surgery hernia. This is again little uncommon, but yes, you can call it athletic pubalgia as well, where there is the anterior thigh muscles are tight and the lower abdominal muscles are not well developed, and then there is imbalance between these two muscles. It may lead to the hernia. We call it athletic pubalgia. Knee injury is one of the common injuries related to in the sports persons, which is very frequently seen with the football, basketball player, athletes and skiing player. So as Kartik has already mentioned about it, ligament injury, patellofemoral ligament, fracture of the patella, direct fall on the ground may lead to patellar fracture, dislocation of the knee. Again, this is very common. Bursitis, tendinitis, ligament injuries, ACL injuries, medial collateral, lateral collateral ligament injuries, and meniscus injury. In my practice, I must say I had seen maximum cases of meniscus injury in the knee joint. And as Dr. Kartik has explained, the role of regenerative therapy, platelet-rich plasma works fantastically for any kind of tear, partial tear, ligament injury, or meniscus injury. One incident I would like to quote that recently, just 1.5 months back, one candidate who is supposed to appear for the recruitment, he came to me and he had extrusion of the medial menisci and he wanted some immediate relief. So MRI was done and we did platelet-rich plasma therapy. After 15 days, he gradually started running, and he was able to, after 20-25 days of the treatment, he was able to run with his full strength. So this is what happens with the regenerative therapy. Ankle injuries, the most common are the ankle sprains, maybe inversion or extroversion, tendo-Achilles tendinitis, it may be rupture, it may be inflammation due to the bony spur formation, or sometimes tendinosis. So Dr. Kartik told that the importance of arc or proper maintenance of the medial arch is very important. It's deciding about the device, what kind of shoes you are selecting. That is very, very important. It plays crucial role. Stress fracture again in the ankle joint at the level of second and third metatarsal. It is very common according to the study. So that was all from my side. Kartik, over to you.
Thank you, Palak. Thank you. Nice presentation. If you can stop sharing, please. Right. So essentially, when you're treating patients, we looked at what are the principles that you want to be seeing. So I talked about a few principles like how do you manage these patients conservatively, what is important in terms of imaging these patients, and how getting the correct diagnosis is important, how resting sportsmen for the correct appropriate time is important, and treating them conservatively and if required with regenerative medicine and if required with surgery is important. Now, some of the things that you want to stress about when you're treating these patients are essentially it's just a question of treating these patients like any other musculoskeletal injury. Now, there are about 2 or 3 things that are peculiar whenever you treat patients with sports injury. First thing that is peculiar or different is there is always a pressure in terms of time available to finish the treatment. So most of the time when patients come with sports injuries, they belong to one or the other professional team. And so you are always under pressure to get this patient or players back to action fast. So you need to make a correct call. You don't want these patients benched for too long and miss a lot of action and thereby also miss a lot of remuneration. You also don't want to put a half-baked player who's not fully recovered and you have not uh, fully recovered and he goes and comes back with a more severe injury. So timing is something that has to be absolutely clear. So that means your diagnosis, treatment protocol should be very, very clear mentally for you. So that's something that you want to keep in mind. So time is very, very important whenever you're treating patients, especially in elite or professional team. That's something that you want to keep in mind. And second is make sure you get the appropriate investigation. So never hesitate to get the investigation, even if there is a small doubt in sportsmen, because you don't want to be missing a diagnosis, which maybe you didn't pick up clinically, but just because you didn't order the MRI that you missed. So always, always, always be liberal whenever you're treating elite sportsmen or international sportsmen in terms of ordering the appropriate image. Third point that I want to tell you is probably whenever there is a treatment and there is an option to do something really advanced, and if you have an option to do something simple, and both of them are going to make these patients better in sportsmen of this caliber or sports injuries, always do simple things. So like they say, less is more. So don't do really, it's not that you don't know how to do advanced stuff. Don't try to do really advanced treatments, really advanced surgeries in sportsmen. These patients are young, they have good healing power, and they are very highly motivated to go back to action fast. They will do very good rehab. So even if you push them 60, 70%, the rest of the 40% they'll take. So always don't do extensive hi-fi stuff in sportsmen. Less is more. Do simple things properly, and the rest the sportsman will take care of them. Right. So just some clinical pearls that you want to keep in mind. So time is something that you need to be. Only if you are clear in your mind as to what the diagnosis is and what the protocol is, you can tell them the time. If you give them more time or less time, both ways it's dangerous. Right. So preventing sports injuries. So this is also something that you have to work on parallelly. So make sure these patients or players are warmed up properly. So both good warm up and warm down is essential. Proper conditioning. So during the off season, the conditioning coach has to work on stretching and strengthening the muscles which are appropriate for these players. So conditioning is very, very important. Balanced diet. So of late, sports nutrition is a big hit. So make sure the players get the appropriate diet. So this the nutritionist has to do. Proper knowledge of the sports skills. So this is something that the players have to be educated. The forearm guard when he's batting, and he comes with a ulnar fracture. He's making a fool of himself. So always use the appropriate protective equipment, proper sports facilities. So players have to be given good facilities for them to practice. Sometimes as a sports physician, we also have to see what sort of surfaces they are playing in, hard surfaces, soft surfaces, grass, clay. So you need to have an idea of where they are playing. And always not a great idea to overtrain. Sometimes, especially people who are in the fringe. So there are players who are trying to get into the team. These are called the fringe players. And in India, you can imagine for a professional team of 10 players, there are 10,000 players who are trying to get into the team. So they are fringe players and they are pretty much trying to do everything that's possible. They are desperate to get into the team. So they are doing more than they probably should. So overtraining also causes more injuries. And always after the appropriate play, they should not go and hit the shower straight away. They need to do the proper cool down. So just like warm up, warming down is also very essential if you want to condition the muscles properly. So players have to be educated about warm up and warming down. So these are things that you want to keep in mind when you're treating patients and educating players, right? Next, so the things that I talked about are time is always a constraint. When in doubt, always ask for the MRI. You are having, when you're treating sportsmen, your responsibility is very high. You also have to put your shoes in the player's mind. So you think of it as a player. So you have a player who's coming, he is trained all his life. He's probably not probably gone to college. He's trained all his life to be the sportsman. And if he doesn't get into that appropriate team in that appropriate category and get the appropriate remuneration, it's not like he can go back and study. So always remember that your decision is going to change the life of the sportsman. So more than a normal physician, a sports physician has more responsibility. And the last one I told you about is treat conservatively as much as possible. Don't do high-fi things, even if you know them. I told you these patients are very motivated. They do good rehab. They are young patients. They heal well. So a lot of times, conservative treatment, they come around quite nicely. And always, always, always remember, sports medicine clinic cannot be run by one doctor alone. It has a teamwork. So multiple doctors are involved in treating patients. So an orthopedician has to be in your team, or you have to be in the team as an orthopedician. Good rehab. I cannot stress how much importance I give to rehab. Good sports physiotherapist, good neuro rehab, good PMR, psychologist, nutritionist, occupational therapist, all of them have a role. So if you want to get good results in sports medicine, you need a good team to back yourself on. So that's my take on sports medicine. So essentially, I and Palak try to finish or talk about what are the fundamentals of sports medicine. Now, sports medicine is a really huge, vast topic. Now, it's not possible for me. Recently, I attended a conference. This conference was sponsored by a football club called Barcelona. And the topic of the conference is a 3-day conference, a weekend conference. It is held in Madrid. So I got online access to it. So the 3-day conference only on soleus and gastrocnemius. So they had a 3-day conference only on the calf muscle. So to cover entire sports medicine in 1 hour is not humanly possible. So we've tried to talk about some common fundamentals that that is involved in sports medicine. So as pain physicians, keep your eyes open, get yourself trained about sports medicine, and there is a role for pain physicians in sports medicine. So you need to be aware, you need to be trained for it, and you will be getting pain patients in your practice, if not today, maybe very soon. So that's my take on fundamentals in sports medicine. Thank you very much. If you have any doubts, I'm happy to answer.
So at present, we can see there is only one question, and that is regarding the books. So what book to read for the further reading?
So some of the pain books do give some information about sports medicine. So that's one option. Second is there is an International Olympic Council. So the International Olympic Council actually runs a 2-year offline program. That's an online program. Sorry, I'm not online program on sports medicine. So that is one of the internationally recognized programs, and they also have study materials. So International Olympic Association has got some good reading material. And other than that, maybe if I can find some books, I'll forward it to the group. So if I can find a PDF copy, I can forward that to the group. So essentially, sports medicine per se, to put it in one book is tricky. That's probably my answer. So if I can find some books, I'll probably put it in the Daradia group so people can share it with the other person.
So I think if anyone has any question, they can just unmute and they can ask directly. So one question is there that is from Dr. Jyoti, and that is how to access the kinetic chain.
Can you elaborate what exactly you're talking about? You're talking about the exercise kinetic chain, is it? Is that what Dr. Jyoti, is that what you're talking about? Okay, so see, I'm not a PMR guy, so I may not be the expert, but essentially it's a rehab concept, kinetic chain. So whenever you are looking at a set of exercises and you are looking at a biomechanical assessment of these patients, and whenever you look at one joint, you have to look at how the next joint is going to work. So in rehab, so this is something probably I've heard my rehab team discuss about. So whenever you're looking at rehabbing players, we look at a kinetic chain in terms of if these patients have injuries in the shoulder, we work on the ipsilateral elbow and the opposite side shoulder. So this is a concept which I understand as kinetic chain. This is something that we use in biomechanical assessment. Correct answer is I'm not the expert in PMR. So yes, this is something that we do. There is something called
yes, and as it has been, you have been emphasized repeatedly that it should be a teamwork by the PMR people, by the orthopedicians, and the pain physicians together should be involved in this kind of injuries.
So see, I think the kinetic chain is a concept that we do some open kinetic chain.
Right.
So as there is no question, we can end today's session.
So thank you very much, Karthik. Yeah, very nicely covered, and Palak also added few aspects. And as you told also that it's a huge area, a huge area, which is impossible to cover in 1 hour. So you have given some ideas about what are the important areas, particularly as a role of pain physicians in the sports injuries or sports medicine related pain. So it was excellent, and you have covered it nicely. So another question on the chat box before we leave. Okay. How much time after the acute injury should be immobilized? Period of immobilization.
So it depends on the injury correctly. So if we are looking at an acute injury with a partial thickness tear or a tendonitis, or if it is a trivial injury. So if it is a trivial injury, the immobilization may not be required. Maximum, we may immobilize them for 2 days. If it is a partial tear, we are looking at immobilizing for about 1 week and reassessing, and if required for 1 more week. If the partial tear is documented with MRI, there is a role for doing a PRP straight away in sportsmen. If it is a complete tear, the immobilization period increases to about 4 weeks, and we sort of look at surgical correction. So roughly, depending on the injury, could be anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks. If it is a complete surgical correction, and slightly longer. Mucoid degeneration and PRP. No, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with. I don't know if there is any role for mucoid PRP and mucoid degeneration. Sir, if you have any experience, please share it. I'm not.
I also don't have any. At least I have not done the mucoid PRP in mucoid degeneration. Okay, so thank you. No more questions. We can end. If anybody has any more questions, they can ask directly. Otherwise, we are winding up today's session. Deputy, I
Hello,
hope there is no other questions.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, I want to ask what
Yes,
should
yes.
be the duration of PRP injection is for partial tear? After how many days we can give patient PRP injections? Like, what is the duration? What should be the gap so that PRP may act?
Okay, so if you're looking at a partial tear of a muscle, we sort of classify them into weight bearing, non-weight bearing, big muscles, small muscles, grading 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a broad classification. So if it is a partial tear in a lay person, like a non-sportsman, there is a role for treating conservatively with rest, icing, immobilization, and waiting for the muscle to heal by themselves. In sportsmen, if you are planning to do an intervention and if this patient player has to go back to action, you can do the PRP reasonably quickly. So you can do the PRP 3 or 4 days after the injury itself and post PRP injection. So essentially, if you look at the difference between cortisone injection or a PRP injection is, whenever you're doing a steroid shot, you're injecting around the tendon. If you're doing a PRP injection, you're going to be injecting into the tendon. Obviously, these procedures have to be image guided. So under ultrasound guidance, find where the tear is, which is already predetermined by the MRI. Inject autologous PRP into the muscle. Usually, we are looking at injecting about 2 to 4 ml of autologous PRP. Since the patient's own blood, there's no possibility of allergic reaction or infection. And usually, I immobilize this patient for a period of about 5 days. And then I have a look at them in terms of range of mobility, both active and passive, and if they are having any pain or not. If after 5 days, I find the patient is comfortable in terms of pain and the range of movement is acceptable, I may put these patients on rehab. So in my clinic, the rehab after PRP starts anywhere between 5 to 7 days max. We are very wary of putting these patients on long-term rest. So we don't want to rest them for more than 1 week. Now, there is a group which after 1 week can still have pain. So in this group, you can wait for some more time. And then the rehab has to be very gradual. If they have extreme pain or the original tear was very extensive, then there is a role for repeating PRP. But most commonly, we find that the patients after 5 days are okay to do rehab. So the normal rehab which the physio does is for 1 week, and then we gradually increase the load and then go back to the sports action from 2 to 3 weeks, and after 3 weeks they can start playing. This is a normal protocol.
Karthik, and one question to you and some experience sharing as well. I had, earlier, nowadays I very rarely see the sports injury situation, but earlier in my practice, I had some experience about the prolotherapy, dextrose and ozone. That time PRP was not popular, and I had some good results, particularly the ankle sprains, ankle ligament injuries. So PRP and dextrose also give good results. So do you have any experience, or what is your comments on this prolotherapy for dextrose prolotherapy, I should say? Is also a kind of prolotherapy like thing.
Yeah, off late,
hypertonic dextrose. Particularly, I remember that time I used to give 12.5% dextrose.
Prolotherapy or prolotherapy in general seems to be having a role arthritic or degenerative joint. Now, the problem with dextrose is, off late we find that there is growing evidence for dextrose and prolotherapy. One, there is also simultaneously growing evidence for procedures like hydrodissection. Hydrodissection usually we do with dextrose. There is also a school which does albumin-based hydrodissection, electrically neutral substances. Now, the problem in this can be tried on an experimental basis in normal people and we can wait and watch. But in sportsmen, to do something experimental and to hope for good results would not be ideal. So probably in sportsmen, my suggestion would be to do something that is more well established. And since we are getting, to tell you the truth, my results with PRP have been amazing, I think short of miraculous. And a lot of times when I started my practice, I used to think that this patient has got a big tear, so I may have to do BMAC injections. This patient has got extensive tear, I may have to do 3 PRP injections. But to tell you the truth, most of these patients became better with single PRP injection. So probably in our clinic we must have done.
So you are very happy with the PRP, so not thinking of anything else. So,
yes.
so okay, that is very important, particularly those who are listening this, so they can also understand that PRP is having a very good evidence also, as well as the results, like experience hearing from Dr. Karthik. Okay, thank you. So no more questions, and let us wind up today's beautiful session. Some introduction to the sports medicines, and I hope many of the interested to learn more about this at today's session.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Das sir. Thank you, Dr. Datta. Thank you for all the delegates. Thank you very much.